I'm going to call the Neary Building Committee to order for Monday, May 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. I'm going to note we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 now of our 8 voting members present and a number of our ex officio members. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes from April 11th, 2022. Were there any questions on the minutes, draft minutes that were circulated? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Katura and Jen, you both tied. Roll call vote. Let's see if I can get my alphabet down tonight. Braccio,
Aye.
Davis, Mark, you're on mute. Donato,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
Primack,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. So that carries unanimously. Next item is review of questions received from the public. As everyone knows, the superintendent has a weekly notice that goes out, and he also sometimes sends interim updates. I think there was one in the middle of the vacation week as well that was specifically focused on Neary. I'll be honest, the data that I saw showed 3 responses. One was a test by someone in the school administration, and the other 2 were from the same individual with the same question with 2 different email addresses. So I will relay what that question was, and it was mainly around what is the scope of the study that is being contemplated. And I think we can get into that, I think, as we go through the slides and presentation tonight. But that was the general gist of that question. I know that we can continue to monitor it as we head towards the town meeting date, which is obviously 48 hours away. Any questions on that? Okay. So main reason why we're here tonight is to review and vote on the presentation for annual town meeting. I put this agenda item before the actual vote on the article itself from the building committee, just mainly because I thought that there'd be good discussion on the presentation, answer any questions to basically be able to inform the vote of this committee itself. I know we talked about potentially a vote last time, and we chose not to take one just to kind of let everything come together. But before we dive into any of the details of the presentation, what I figured I would do is 2 things. One, update everyone on what the expectation is on Wednesday night, which is my best estimate of when this article will be taken up. And then 2, have our select board and advisory representatives just indicate where their committees are at in terms of vetting of this article, just so everyone's aware of kind of the context of other public conversations that have happened. So first and foremost, the moderator is allowing a presentation with any article. We have reserved a spot to make a presentation, hence why we're going to discuss it tonight. We are allowed 6 minutes to make a presentation. So that's not a lot of time when you're talking about the various aspects, but we will do our best, hence why there's not a lot of slides. The goal obviously is to continue any education we can do between now and town meeting, but also educate in response to inquiries that may come up on town meeting floor. So that is the plan for Wednesday night, is assuming we vote on a presentation tonight, it will be posted to the town website tomorrow. You're welcome to circulate it as you see fit once that is posted. And then that will also be the same slides that are presented to whoever's in the hall on Wednesday night. This is Article 16. So it will not necessarily be the 16th item taken up because there are items that are just naturally done via consent that pass with one motion for any that have taken part of that before. It does also come after the operational budget for the town, as well as all other capital articles for the town. So it's like the last article from a capital, like from a finance perspective, before moving on to, I'll call it other non-financial type articles is probably the best way to term them, be it town bylaws, citizen petitions, etc. So that's the general setup. So before I turn it to Lisa and Andrew, just update us on where they're at. Are there any questions on just the general format? Okay. I'm seeing none. So Lisa, I'll go to you. If you could just indicate where the select board's at, the position you took, and any discussion, if any, that the board has had.
So the board, sorry, Jason. The board voted unanimously to support this. Obviously, the board has been updated through the capital subcommittee, Neary subcommittee process. There was discussion based upon the meetings that had already been had. So I guess I don't need to go into the subcommittee meetings, but the board was unanimously supportive. No relative concerns other than some members thought $950,000 was a good chunk of change to, to need to explain to town meeting.
Andrew, advisory.
Advisory voted 1-3-1 not to support the article. And we are probably going to try to take it up again at town meeting just before our meeting, as two people were not in attendance to vote. So it might change the vote a bit. So I think the concerns were more along the dollar amounts than it was the kind of need for doing this piece. But that's basically it.
And Katura or Jen, have there been any conversations at the school committee level since the February presentation that kind of led to all of this?
Just regular updates at at our school committee meetings, but nothing major. I mean, I know that the school committee did vote to support this, so school committee's obviously behind it. Right, Jen? Anything else? Am I missing anything?
No, there were no concerns or questions raised.
No?
Okay.
Can I
Go ahead, Katura, go ahead.
Is there any additional information that would be helpful for advisory to have? I mean, I guess they'll have this they'll have this presentation in writing because it'll be public tomorrow. I mean, it's public now, but published tomorrow. Just wondering if there's any sort of how we can help, if at all.
Yeah, we provided some more information based upon basically, the justification of the dollar amount based upon previous studies. I think it was more along the lines of some members still thought that, why would we close Woodward and Neary needs some work, but how much will it cost to fix Neary versus build a brand new school and close another school? So, what do you do? Do you do a 60,000 square foot school, a 50,000, 100,000 square foot, or 98 or 90, whatever we have in there? So I think it's really like, what is the scope? I think some of the members just thought that building that large of a school and needing that large of a feasibility study was a lot. But I would say, Katura, if some of the school committee members could show, we're meeting at 5 on Wednesday before town meeting. And we're going to try to take another vote to at least let the other two members that were absent vote. I think that would be certainly good to have you guys there, or Greg or Jason or anybody that can make it to speak to it and advocate for it.
Oh, interesting. So you're meeting at 5 on Wednesday?
Yeah, so we're going to revote. We're hopefully going to revote it if the other two members are present.
Okay. I see. Okay. I thought you were saying you were going to vote it revote on the floor. You know how that happened, like, right before the presentation. So, okay.
Yeah, we always have, there's still a few articles that we haven't voted on, mostly the citizens petitions that we were giving people a last minute. So we usually have a pre-town meeting and get our final votes in.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we do not have a posted meeting for that, so just need to be conscious of that piece. If we wouldn't be able to have a quorum in the room for that, so we can try to coordinate and see if we can send a representative or two. I know most other boards are meeting beforehand too, so there may be some overlap.
Yeah.
Jason?
Go ahead, Lisa.
No,
Sorry.
no, I was just going to say that it might be useful as we go through the presentation, and Andrew, you're pretty thorough, so I'm sure you've probably already gone through it, but maybe if we ask you again at the end of this conversation, kind of the same question, Katura, if there might be something highlighted within the presentation that you think might alleviate some of the concerns to advisory members, or the discussion that we have, just so we have potentially additional guidance on how we can get advisory support going forward.
Okay, so let's launch into the presentation. Does everyone want to follow along on their own screen, or do you need me to try to bring it up, or have someone try to bring it up? Any strong preference? All right, I'm going to keep going in this setting. If you see me go over here, I'm going to be making changes on the fly, but if we have any. But the only change that has been made since this was circulated last night was Mr. Mucci did send me a very quick note with one typo in the header on slide 4. Just giving me a suggestion on how a way for it to read a little smoother, which I completely agreed with. So that is the only change that I have made since then, because the intent was obviously for us to deliberate as a group here tonight. So with that, I am not going to go around the horn. Anyone have comments on any particular slide, just raise your hand. I'm not going to also go slide by slide. I'm just really looking for any comments or conversation you want to have about what may come out verbally as the slides are presented. Anyone want to go first? Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, does the I'm not sure what page I'm on, facts known about the repairs. Did we ever get a definitive statement from somebody that a renovation of this size would trigger all the lacking code issues? And if we did, I think the terminology should be a little bit stronger than have the likelihood to trigger. I'd rather see a definitive statement.
So,
and we may want to include some of those because, as I understand it, most of them are all public safety issues.
So the choice of words was intentional. But I welcome changes to it. The main reason is we don't control the appraisal of the building. The town's assessor controls that. So while we could all use our best educated guesses, it's repairs over a 3-year window at a certain percentage, which I believe is currently 30% of the appraised value. And you also don't know, you have cost estimates, but we also all know how good cost estimates are these days. As well. So if you just did the roof, that wouldn't trigger all of the items that are noted here. You take the roof, you start adding the windows, you start doing HVAC repairs, you start doing anything else that may be needed to the building, you could quickly hit that threshold. The only alternative that I could suggest to be more definitive is when we made the presentation to the school committee, we had a bullet point that talked about a blanket $4 million that we know need to be done in the next couple of years just to make the the school safe. That was before any inflation, to be completely honest as well. That was based on a 2021 number. We could just take that number and say, based on the current assessment and the current known items, it's highly likely or very likely, or
I would just
you
say,
know,
Jason, it would, right? I mean, it would be over 50% at that point in time. So
Okay. Yeah.
but the current known, quantity of things that need to happen in the next 3 years would trigger ADA compliance. And Mark, the other part is the code compliance, right? So I think that, and I'm not a builder, but you might know better than me. It's whether or not you touch that area, right? So if we could spend $3-4 million, trigger ADA, but if we only work in one corner of the building, we might not be doing a substantial enough renovation to have to do the whole building in code. But anything we touch would have to be brought up to code.
Yeah, as I understand it, the sprinkler system will come into play. ADA, you've got to bring up the electric to code, and all of the bathroom facilities and everything else, which is all related to ADA. The reason it might be helpful to put these issues down. If I were voting on a project to make a $4 million renovation, it is extremely short-sighted of our town to not deal with ADA, we should not have a public building with kids in it that's not sprinklered. So I'm not afraid of these issues. And in fact, I think they're important issues that somehow need to be listed there. We don't have numbers associated with them, but we should not be avoiding them at the same time. And I guess that goes to somebody assuming, well, if you're going to renovate the school and you've got a value of $4 million to renovate it, what are we doing this feasibility? Why don't we just start going ahead and renovating it? And those issues will certainly come into play. That $4 million is woefully short if you have to retrofit all these other items into that school.
Right, Katara.
I like Mark's point about being a more definitive that would be triggered, and I wonder if to convey that, but still leave some room for some adjustment of the numbers. If we could just sort of start that off with saying based on the most recent valuations, or based on the numbers that have been arrived at to date, or something like that, because that is what it's based on, and it's unlikely that the value of the building has gone up a whole lot, and the costs will likely have gone up. So
this is what I've written down and changed in that bullet point based on this discussion. I said, based on the latest appraisal on the town's property record card, the current known repairs in the next 3 years will trigger additional costs related to ADA upgrades and fire suppression, amongst other items.
mm-hmm.
That's good.
Do we want to qualify the additional costs and say like significant additional cost, or I don't know, because I mean it's not just an extra 100,000. I mean, this is like millions of dollars. So I don't know.
So
I guess we can talk to that.
Yeah. So I think part of the job when presenting this is, to the point, Couture, I think you remind me of every public meeting I'm in with you, of a broader plan, right? This doesn't talk about how we repurpose anything, but I think Mark used the word short-sighted not too long, in like 2 minutes ago, is we're trying to come up with a comprehensive plan. Do I personally wish we could do for 50,000 or 100,000, bring a plan forward to the town and say, this is how we're going to configure our schools for the next 30 to 50 years. This is what's going to happen with the buildings, and this is the overall cost. Yes, but I wish we could do that. But we've also been fortunate enough to be one of the few towns that are selected in the first round of going to the MSBA to be in the eligibility period. And that's just not how they work. They want you to get a firm commitment from the town, which is why we're seeking the full amount, not the net amount. We have to get the gross amount of the 950 to show that the town is committed to doing something with Neary. What that something is certainly up for debate, conversation, public forum, in a future vote. But we're basically authorizing 2 years worth of work in one article, not 2 months of work, which is, I think, what many people think about with a feasibility study. And not that anyone's going to remember the public safety building, but this is the complete opposite approach we took with the public safety building. We just spent a couple $100,000 of feasibility and then dropped a $22 million number after finding a parcel of land. That was because we all along were doing it on our own as a town. And I think that's probably a better way of doing it. We just can't do that unless we plan to decouple ourselves from the MSBA, which I don't think anyone is suggesting at this point in time. So obviously town meeting will ultimately have a voice in that, but that's why you go through this process. And I see a lot of merit to, why they're doing it this way. Mark, while you have the floor, did you have any comments other than what you've thrown out on the slide 5, facts about known repairs?
The only other comment I had is on the last page with the questions. And the last one, I'll just ask it a different way because it might help us. Is there any program, educational program that's defined that we can't do due to the facilities, the current facilities at Neary? Is there something that we're lacking there that we can't succeed with our current programs?
I'm going to let Stephanie or Kathleen answer that question.
Kathleen, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can start off. So there's many things I can speak to in regards to that question. For example, our learning center, which is used as a music/band location where we house not only lessons, but band practice. It consists of a 6 4-foot risers. It's a platform type of arena classroom, which is essentially not a classroom, but the teaching space is at the ground level. It also creates accessibility issues for students who may be in a wheelchair or their ambulatory concerns. So it's not accessible to all, but it is a space that we've turned into a classroom. Student support services is another area that 2 special ed teachers share a very small space where we're also bringing small group instruction into that space. So confidentiality is limited. The volume is difficult to control. To maximize student learning there, we often bring students out into the hallways, in small tables, at small tables. For the library space is at the center of Neary. It's utilized 3 ways. It's not only the library, but it's also the literacy lab where small group instruction is happening with our reading teacher. And it's also our technology space. So we have 3 groups of people within that space and lots of students. So lots of great learning, but lots of noise. And it's a difficult place for those 3 entities to function within one classroom. We also have our technology issues. Our infrastructure isn't necessarily supports all of our needs. We have professional learning spaces are limited. We actually turned our hallway alcove into a conference room so that we're able to bring families into that space, whether it's for conferences or IEP meetings. There's no heating. There's a lot of windows in it, but it's a space that we needed. So we did that by putting a partition glass wall in the hallway to be able to support that need. We also have our science lab, which is essentially a classroom, but because in response to the new Massachusetts state science standards and our adoption of Carolina Science and hands-on science program, we felt the need to turn a classroom into a science lab, which it lacks the adequate safety features of a traditional science lab, and as well as the technology infrastructure to support this type of learning. I can keep going on if you'd like. Okay.
I think my point is that we don't need to add something like this to our presentation, but I think we should have a planted question from town meeting floor exactly to this question. If I have a student, he goes to Finn. Finn is relatively new. It has all the facilities. I'm not seeing deficiencies down there that I normally would expect. Then they go to Woodward, and Woodward showed off really well the other morning. My grandson's going there next year, so I could report to my daughter, geez, this is set up just perfect. You go to Neary, and we had the tour. There's a lot of people who haven't been in Neary in years. And it's these deficiencies that suddenly, as a parent, would raise my ears a little bit, saying, geez, I'm going to get my son or daughter into 4th and 5th grade, and we've got all these issues going on. What are we doing? And then we jump them up to Trotter. I think this could be just somebody in the audience asking that kind of a question and get into those details. I don't think we're representing that we're going to suddenly build this monstrosity of a school, but we have some educational programs, and I saw it on the short tour I saw it 30 years ago when my kids went through the school, that there are deficiencies down there that will affect the educational program that we expect to be offered. And you've done admirably with what you've got, but as a town, we could do much better. And I think that's an important message.
So I'll open it to the committee of whether they want to remove that bullet point or not from the actual FAQ, and position it more as if Mark feels passionately about this, that he certainly as a town meeting member can stand up and ask the question or share his thoughts. What does the committee think? Go ahead, Katara.
Okay, so I mean, I had a related comment about the FAQ slide that I think relates to a little bit to what Mark is saying. So my comment about the FAQ slide, which is a totally different angle, but since we're putting this out ahead of town meeting, and I don't expect everyone who's going to town meeting is going to be looking for this and preparing, but you know, some people may, and especially if they're interested in this, and also to sort of continue publicizing town meeting, we might want to like link to it, or, you know, sort of make it known that it's out there. And do we want to, on the FAQ slide, just do a bullet point after each question answering the question? Because I know we're going to speak to it in our 6 minutes, but just to get the bottom line answer to each question out there, so that it's not just, these questions aren't just hanging, you know, in writing. So that's kind of a related thing. So I can go either way. I like I mean, I think it's an excellent point that, the deficiencies of Neary. And I mean, my oldest went through Neary, and it's amazing what they're doing with the building, but it is deficient. And so getting those things known and out there, and I think it's a great idea. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I can go either way with the question from the audience or leaving the bullet. I don't know what everyone else thinks. And I'm genuinely curious if other people think putting answers, like a one-line answer on there would be useful, or if it's better to leave it like this, because it kind of, sometimes if you say something, it makes it more complicated and you can't say everything. So I don't know, but.
Any strong thoughts one way or another?
I don't have a strong thought, but I do like the idea of answering the questions, because I do, but I don't know if that was intentional. I haven't been to a town meeting yet, so I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I do like the idea of like a little answer to it, just to give you a little bit more information, because I don't know, I think some people, I'm trying really hard to get younger people to come to the meeting, but I think some people want to just like read something, understand it, and then maybe make a choice. So that's just my 2 cents. But I do think, like Mark said, it's really, as an educator who's worked in a bunch of different school buildings, and I was really shocked at this condition of Neary. And I can't imagine how hard it is as a principal to kind of deal with the lack of conference space, small group space, noise. I was pretty shocked. So I think as a parent too, some of that information and those small details is good for people to know.
And Jason, if I can tack on to that, I completely agree, Jen. And I think, my son went to Neary a long time ago, and it's a stark contrast when you go between the schools. Finn, Trotter, and Woodward are very bright. And I think it's conducive to a good educational experience. And then you go into Neary, and it's old and it's dark, and everything about it is dark, from the layout and as Kathleen said, I mean, when my son was there, when someone needed a little bit of extra help, they were in the hallways. And, again, the disruptions of kids walking out to use the facilities or whatnot. Again, I think, Mark, you've made a very good point on stressing it's educational deficiencies, but also building deficiencies are where we're failing our students as well. So I think I agree with everything that's been said. I think that's one of the most important points, I think, in what we're trying to make as well, is making people understand. And again, some families don't have the benefit of having kids go through Neary. So they have no idea what they're going to expect when you go in that door. And I give the educators and the administration there a lot of credit for trying to give our kids a great educational opportunity. It's just, I think the building itself is hindering that and the educational programs. That's it.
So let me ask a question so I can propose how to move that piece forward. Are there any FAQs that anyone thinks they've heard that are missing out of these 4 right now?
Yes, so Jason, I took a look at Hopkinton's FAQs. I don't know if you saw those. So I just kind of took a look at them and kind of, this was just on their feasibility study when they went through their town meeting for their school. Let me just put it up real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. You should have privileges to do that.
Yeah. There we go. So I just kind of, real quick, just took them and then kind of extrapolated it for our purposes. But, new doesn't matter because we haven't actually done one. Why the 600,000? I kind of took this and kind of, I can tweak it for the 950. I did that just if you want to look at it. I thought this was good. You kind of alluded to what it is, but I thought this was a good succinct, just basically changing the number to 950 and including this, what activities. population assessment, we could put that in, but you know, we know we've done a lot of those studies already, so we're pretty comfortable with those numbers. Renovating, selected. And then, you know, the building committee, you know, we can go into that piece. So I kind of just before the meeting, I took a quick stab at kind of rewriting a couple of those, but those, I thought maybe we could just include them in the FAQs.
So my suggestion is that we just create a separate FAQ document based on what Andrew started to do here, and then layering on some themes from the first 3 bullet points. And then I don't know that in words we're going to be able to do justice to that last one in writing beforehand. I think having whether it's Greg, Stephanie, stand up at town meeting and answer that question from an educational policy perspective, and potentially one of the school committee members, if they feel comfortable adding anything on to that, I think would be the best way to go. Because Kathleen, your response to Mark, which I know you could keep going, and you know, was very poignant and obviously visible with just, you know, a physical tour of the building. So what do people think about that?
Jason, would it be a handout that we could have on the table, something people could read and you know, as they come in and they sit down and people shuffle through all their papers? Is it something we could put on the town election page? I know Mr. Hagerty has facts and Q codes and all of that. I mean, are you thinking along those lines?
I think first and foremost is getting something on the town website and having people direct to it. I think handouts are obviously always helpful to those that don't like to read electronically, but I also realize we're 48 hours or less away from the start of town meeting. So we'd have to work with Mark, Greg, and the team there. And I'm not sure what sort of procedures Mr. Hagerty has in place, or Mr. Seaman. I don't know who controls the handout part of the process. So Andrew, why don't you
So I thought this was one piece that I think and this I'm missing the data here. This is from their study, but I believe when we did the analysis, it was coming out a little bit over 1 million. So I just have to double check my numbers and update these ones here and the data. But this is about the historical breakout. It's roughly about 27%, and I think 73% or so of costs broken out. But I thought this kind of just talks about, it's been, I believe this is correct, Neary, we've done it, capital planning's reviewed it, right, Jason, or they're going to?
Yeah, I mean, capital planning's been obviously involved all along the way.
Yeah.
There's an official position tonight.
Okay, school committee, advisory, select board have all reviewed it. I thought this was good. This is pretty much word for word what they talked about, but I thought this kind of talks about the different pieces that it's going to cover. You know that we don't know whether or not we're constructing a new one or renovating. That's what this is for. And then have sites been selected? No, that's part of the study. So those were 4 good. If I can update that, the average cost section, I think that's good.
So Andrew, my only on the last item, I hesitate with that one a little bit because like I think we say it in one of the earlier slides, you know, and obviously the slides are now going to be independent from the FAQ document. You know, this will involve a holistic review of the grade configuration, because I think one of the potential goals of this is determining whether we can really go from 4 schools in our K-8 structure to 3. And how do you accomplish that from a facility perspective, but also an operational perspective? So
yeah, I think we can take that one out.
Yeah, I mean,
it's also Hopkinton, I think, built a brand new school on a new site. That's why that they had that as a.
I unfortunately don't think we have many choices on sites, based on all the work Lisa did on capital planning to determine what's, unless we're going out and proposing land acquisition, which I don't think anyone has an appetite for. So then, Andrew, what about, so do you think, so if we look back at the FAQs that were in the draft deck, I still think we need to add at least the first two in, right? Which would be, why not just start with the known repairs that are needed for Neary, such as the roof?
Yep.
And I think we're not gonna be able to create something on the fly, so we're probably gonna need the consent of the committee to delegate that question to one or two people to draft. And but that I'll highlight at least what I believe the themes are, which would be talking about a holistic plan, not, you know, a Band-Aid type approach, knowing that just the roof alone is going to cost a couple $100,000 to engineer, design, get construction documents on, and we don't know what the longer term plan is for the school. And then I think that leads into number two, which is, why don't we just shut Neary down and consolidate to Woodward and Finn? I haven't heard a single person say, oh no, Neary doesn't need work, you know, any sort of substantial work. I think what people were hoping is that you just could shut Neary, consolidate into Woodward and Finn, maybe do a potential small expansion to Finn, and, you know, not have to think about the thought of a larger construction project. I think the reality, unfortunately, is if you actually take current enrollment, and this is what I've done some number crunching on, take the actual current enrollment. So you take out all sorts of projections today, and with our enrollment that's currently in the schools, we can't take more than 2 grades and put it at Woodward. So you couldn't take 3 grades and send them to Woodward, no matter how you want to configure the schools, without creating an issue with the occupancy permit, which to me was pretty persuasive, because that's a known fact, like current data. I don't think anyone's arguing that the schools are going to see another massive drop. I think what our enrollment data tells us the exact opposite, is we need to be prepared that the number is going to come up a little bit. They're not going to be tremendously large and cause a need for another school, but we can't be short-sighted with some of these decisions. So, you know, those two questions, I think we need to come up with some verbiage around, and potentially some numbers around, because that kind of goes to why we're going this route, as opposed to, you know, an addition at Finn. And it really does eliminate the question for now of grade 5 at Trotter. I think there's some philosophical beliefs on that strongly on both sides. Is everyone knows that the fact Trotter has a lot of room, but does 5th grade belong there? I think, you know, the educators have clearly told us their view, but we have a lot of people in the community that, you know, have taken the inverse position. That really doesn't factor in at this point. So that was at least my proposal of how we respond to those. I don't know if anyone has any other ideas to layer on to that.
I think the first one, I would say, do the roof and the windows together. Right. I think those are both things that need to be done, you know, after touring the school. And, you know, I think that the case there is, we don't start with those, because then we're going to have to make the entire building ADA compliant. I mean, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar comment, that I think if we're going to go the route of an FAQ, which I love, I've always liked the idea of a handout. I wasn't sure we were able to do that. So if we're going to do that, I think it would be great to kind of weave in some of the other information that's in the presentation that will be given, so people can get a preview, such as the ADA, you know, the bringing it up to compliance issue, you know, how much would need to be spent within the next few, you know, couple of years, that kind of thing. It just, maybe some of that basic information, just so that it's all there, and we're not just highlighting certain things in that FAQ, the key things. I have one more comment too, just on under the first paragraph of the draft FAQ, there was a sentence about what the average feasibility study for the MSBA has been. I think it said 562 or something. That's a lot less than what we're asking for. I'm not sure is that a helpful fact
That was from Hopkinton's elementary schools.
Yeah.
Or it was from their study. I haven't updated to the.
Oh, I see.
I just
Gotcha.
need to look at the data, and I thought we had it when we had our meeting. It was like over a million, a little over a million.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's what I thought. It did seem low. And then maybe we also point out in that same paragraph that some of that will be reimbursed and the final, the final cost to the town will be lower.
Yeah. Jason has the reimbursed piece.
Yeah.
We can add that to the FAQ.
Yeah. Great.
So sounds like we're going to eliminate the FAQ slide entirely. Andrew will circulate kind of the markup of what he started. We're going to add these two questions in. I'm happy to do it with Katura and Greg if the committee's okay with that, unless anyone else wants to take a stab. Okay. And we will circulate that piece once it's ready, just so people can get the word out.
Thank you, Jason and Katura.
Sorry to volunteer, Katura, but you've been knee-deep in
I
this.
didn't know it was coming. I thought this was my last chance to make comments. So fine, it's fine.
So let's if we've handled the FAQ, are there any comments now on what remains of slides 1 through 5?
I thought once we do, if we can add some to slide 3, just more in terms of the kind of the market analysis on how we came up with the 950, or we kind of take some of that from the FAQ, but I think that would be good to put in there. And then I think we can use some of that language from the FAQ that I had in terms of talks about the different pieces that they'll actually go through, just to beef this up a little bit, but I think that's it. And on the known repairs, do we want to look at the full $3 million that Vertex had instead of just the roof?
Yeah, so that includes like ceiling tops and stuff as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the roof and the windows, but.
We can. I went back and forth. I don't have a strong opinion. I don't know what others think. Any opinions on that? Go ahead, Mark.
I think the more you put in, the more people are going to take the position, oh, good grief, we really have to do something down here. If it's just the windows and the roof, you're leading someone down the path of, well, if that's all there is to it, let's go do that. And we don't even need to spend $1 million. We could do that differently. I'd rather see us be honest. What are the issues in that report and list them.
Okay. And so I think what we can do is we can call it the main components. We will add an escalation clause of about 20%, which is what my understanding is what the escalation is on these type of projects since the street deck was done, which is scary, but true. And we'll take approximately 15% of that number, which is what it takes to do engineering and construction documents and public bids. And that will be the number we show as opposed to roof. But it'll all tie back to the 100+ page report that the school department did on this building that has lots of pictures and support behind it.
You know, speaking of pictures, as we've been talking and talking about all the people who haven't actually seen Neary, I don't, and the answer to this may be no, but are there any, do we want to include a couple of, are there any pictures that we could just put, a page of a few pictures of, and just demonstrate. Unfortunately, the floors are so shiny and it looks really good. So maybe those are hard to come up with, but there might be some good examples, and we label underneath, like some kid working in the hallway, like this is the extra classroom, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's going too far, but it just for the people who've never seen it, it could be helpful.
Yeah, I think for me, I hadn't been to Neary or Woodward since I went there, and it was pretty eye-opening. Just like the ELD was one that stuck out to me, where I think Kathleen has two people working in the same X bathroom, right? And then you go to Woodward, and there's a beautiful room with a window, and this room has no windows, and there's 4 times the square footage. Bathrooms, at Neary, I could barely fit in. Right. And so the bathrooms are completely not ADA accessible, and they're not even AP accessible. And so I think, I think pictures like that would be like kind of the compare and contrast. Like once one of your, you're going to have this experience at this school and a drastically different experience at this school. Once you move, your kid's going to be in a windowless room taking something versus a, beautiful room with space and the right programming. And so I think, pictures are one thing, but I think doing a compare and contrast on what, or even, I don't know, and I haven't seen Finn or Trottier, but I'm assuming they're newer and it has a better piece, but almost like showing certain spaces as so much of an outlier at Neary versus those spaces at our other 3 schools.
Yeah,
I think would be
like a side by side, Andrew. I was thinking I'm thinking of the conference room at Neary, the conference room at Woodward, the small, reading pullout space at Woodward, and then it in the middle of the library with 3 other things going on.
Yeah, or the library at Woodward with windows and wide open spaces, and the library at Neary that's got no windows and is used as a IT lab and and 3 other things, right? So I think is what probably a quarter of the size of that at Woodward, and houses more grades, right? So I think just some of those where it's, this is the picture of one, this picture of the other, total square footage, it would really show the lack there.
And I think the library, is a perfect example. There's so many different things going on, and it's, again, going back to the whole dark and, trying to get that educational experience that, when you're sharing the library with computers and whatnot, there's just way too many distractions to expect the best outcome. So I think that'd be a great one to use as well.
And then pulling it all back to it's our wonderful educators and administration have made this workable. But are we going to put millions of dollars into this building? Because that's really what, where are we directing those funds? It makes no sense.
Yeah, or at least millions of dollars into making it a school, right? I think it's as a school, it's lived out its life, and
I think the one thing we need to remember that we just need to bring home, and it's the timeline slide. I was in a much different place in the year 2000, but the taxpayers of Southborough voted to do something to every school, but pretty much Neary. The only thing they did at Neary was add on the modular classrooms. So Andrew, to your point of you've never seen Finn, you wouldn't know that Finn is actually a 1960 school because of the additions, right? In the renovations that were made in the 2000 timeframe. Neary didn't get that love. Every other school got the love, and we decided to build a new Woodward. Me personally, now sitting here, in hindsight's always 2020, that was a colossal mistake for the town, because that's really what's potentially causing some of the issues today. In terms of, we built a school that really has a capacity of 2 grades, as opposed to what we're potentially considering is having some flexibility for administrators as educational policy develops to have, the space they need, but not too much space. And we obviously built on a landlocked parcel. At the time, it's even more landlocked now. But you weren't going to be creeping over into the 18th hole or whatever hole that used to be, in the past either. So I think we need to, pictures obviously tell a story, and I think we should be selective of which ones we do. But I think we just need to remember that obviously buildings have a useful life. They can certainly be extended with the right amount of renovation, repair, et cetera. But this one has not had any sort of major investment in it since, a few systems were replaced out in 2006, but really nothing added on to it other than a few modular classrooms in 50 years. That's the punchline to me. I don't know what it is to others, but
Really good points.
so we need to get this presentation in for tomorrow. So my thought would be we do not put the pictures in the actual presentation. We see if we can't weave a few into the handout, in and around however much content. I think one page is our goal. Front and back is fine. But that would be my recommendation, just given where we're at on a calendar. What else on the slide? Anything else on the slides? All right, so the edits I have are to remove the FAQ section, which is slide 6, and to add some of the verbiage from the FAQs related to the market analysis, i.e. how we came up to the 950 and what that covers, which may spill into a second slide. Is there any other content anyone wants to add? All right, is there a motion to support the slides with the edits that were discussed this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Is there any further conversation? All right, roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Donato,
Aye.
Martin,
aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
Primack,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that carries unanimously. And then our next agenda item is to take a position on the article itself. So is there any discussion before someone moves on this? Is there a motion related to a position from the Neary Building Committee on Article 16 Neary feasibility study for 950K?
So moved.
Moving to support?
I'm sorry, moving to support, sorry. I
Okay.
was looking down as I
Is there
said
a
it, yes,
second to
sorry.
that motion?
Second,
Seconded by Katura. Any further conversation? All right, roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Donato,
Aye.
Martin,
aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
Primack,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that one is also unanimous. Is there any public comment? I am seeing none. My suggestion on a meeting schedule is we wait and see what happens on Wednesday night and decide how to move forward based on whether the vote is up or down and go from there. Does anyone have any objections to that plan? Okay. From a logistics standpoint, based on the advice of town council, because we may be faced with an amendment on town meeting floor related to this article, like any other, any citizen is obviously welcome to make amendments based on what they're hearing. We have the ability to deliberate and revote based on an amendment. So there is a meeting posted for specifically the Neary Building Committee. Obviously, most other boards and committees have the same sort of thing. So, and I know everyone's, at least obviously select board, we got school committee members, we got advisory, we have capital planning. So we'll have to figure out, depending upon whether the moderator asks for positions other than select board and advisory. We'll have to figure out how to accomplish that. But I just wanted to make everyone aware, because that is a little new this year, at least from my opinion, of having that kind of meeting posted within town meeting. Is there anyone not planning to be there? Okay. Is there any other business anyone wants to discuss? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Mark.
All right, we'll give Mark the tie on that one. Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Donato,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Bath,
Aye.
Primack,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. Have a good evening, everyone, and